What? Spring.
Hi, Tammy.
Hello. Sorry, I didn't realize my mic was on. I was just talking to myself. Uh, hey, Marilee. I'm glad Naomi took action. That was on my guilt list for a while.
Yeah. Oh, and one thing to tell you is I think we do need to do a second coder, but and I think there's a way we could do it that would be okay, but it'd be good for us all to talk through what that process would be. Because I need to read what they've said, but I think I know
I would
I
love
know
your
what their
guidance.
concern is.
I would take your guidance. I think what we can do is I can take Naomi's list, not look at her outcomes, and code them separately. I don't have
Yeah,
to research.
right.
That's
And
what I.
that's what I'm thinking. And then if if there are disagreements, um, there are processes you can use to bring them in. Hopefully there won't be, and then it's beautiful. Um, so that's what I'm hoping happens.
Well, can we have a third party break the tie like you?
That's sometimes what you do is you bring in a third party on a qualitative study. That's one way. Another is that the two of you discuss it because they'll talk about that's another approach that's taken in
Yeah, that's fair.
in that piece of qualitative research. So
Yeah, that's
either
legit.
way usually works, and I can we can decide like which one they the person appears to be more wanting.
Yeah, okay. You have you have two engineers faking out qualitative research. Warning, warning.
Doing great. I mean,
Hey, Erica. Yeah, not rejected yet. Hey, Danny.
Hello.
How are you doing, Erica? You look very
Doing.
summery.
I'm just sitting in my backyard, but thanks.
Can wait a couple minutes. Marilee, do you have slides? I
yeah,
should
I
have set
do.
you up to be able to share, so you can check that if you want to.
I have my husband in the other room if I can't figure out how to pull him up, which is usual for me.
We can do it.
Yeah, I think I can.
Hey,
It
Kristen.
looks like it'll work. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I believe I have stable internet now, Kristen. Contractually obligated tech support. I love it. Hmm. I think Lisa's around. Erica, we miss having pie. You need to hire someone else.
I know. I miss it too.
We better talk about that. I was supposed to talk to you, and I did not.
Yeah, I get it.
No, it's unacceptable. I'm failing. Um, okay, well, I don't know what Ellison's status is. I actually didn't check the role, but we can get started. Um, yeah, where's Misa? Oh, he might have had a house. He's been having a lot of houses since we increased the, no, he doesn't have a house. Anyway.
Allison's out today.
Okay.
Allison.
Well, I don't know where Misa is. Okay. Well, Marilee, I'm just gonna let you lead the whole shebang.
Okay. Um, so first, one apology, which is that even though I had great expectations in what 3 weeks ago, this I don't have as much for you as I would normally have. We had a couple of funny things in the department, and in a year, I have that, I cannot use that excuse anymore. So I'm trying to use it as much as possible in the in the next
You'll
actually
have to
year
use a
and
different excuse.
um, but I have a get to know you question, which is what's something you have to do this weekend, but you don't want you're not really looking forward to it. In fact, you could hate it. And what would you rather be doing during that length of time that you're estimating you would have to do the bad thing? And so I'll start, and then I'm going to put the order in the chat here real quick before I um, start out. I can spell. Okay. So we're happy. It's a good thing, but it's not good. Well, that sounded bad. The We have friends coming this weekend. They've been saying they were going to come for a while, and then they kind of decided, and earlier than I hoped. So the not fun thing I have to do this weekend is I need to take all this stuff. I've used my two daughters' bedrooms more as what my mother used to call jumble rooms, where you could just throw anything in there and close the door and nobody knows. But since they're staying for a few days and we need the beds in there, I need to get all my stuff out of there and clean through those. So that's what I'm not looking forward to. What I would rather be doing with that time is that the latest Richard Osman book about the Thursday Murder Club series is out in paperback. And I'd really rather go to a coffee shop and read that book because I went hiking last weekend. So this weekend, I'd rather do something quieter. So, um, Christian, you're up next.
Okay. We had a new fence put in and that went through our sprinkler lines. So I'm repairing our sprinklers this weekend. So that's what I really don't want to be doing. It'd be really nice to get out on the water. Seems like a great day to be out on the lake and do something like that.
I hope you have good luck with your repair of the water of your sprinkler system. That's a bummer. Erica, who is, I
Sorry.
think you're there. Oh, that's okay.
Think my computer is overheating being outside. I actually have a pretty good weekend, so I feel like I was trying to think of bad parts of it, and I felt like I was just being like really picky. So I guess the one thing that I could think of, which is not necessarily too terrible, but my in-laws are camping at Horsetooth all week, and we're going up to hang out with them a little bit. And I really wanted to buy like a mattress for our Tesla and the window covers and sleep in our car. But my husband said he didn't want to sleep in our car and we would just drive home at night. So we're not sleeping in our car like I wanted to.
Well, that takes me back to being a kid and thinking that was so cool to sleep in the car.
Right? And it's so much easier now because like you can buy a mattress that like is fit exactly for the car.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Uh, Danny, you're next.
Mine is tomorrow morning. We're flying out pretty early to go hang out with Natasha's family at the beach. So I think the thing I'm not excited about is getting up really early. And the thing I'd rather do is sleep in and maybe enjoy Colorado a little bit longer because it feels like the summer's going really fast. So that's probably mine.
And you probably said it, Danny, and I forgot. Where are you flying to?
We're flying into Philly and then we drive into New Jersey.
Ah.
So we're going to the Jersey Shore.
Like Cape May or something like that.
Yeah, north in Stone Harbor, like Avalon area, north of Cape May.
Yeah. Okay.
I hope you can sleep on the plane then, in the scheme of things. Paul, you're next.
Yeah, so being in Lucca in Italy, it's hard to come up with a huge amount, but I've got a couple of candidates. Um, One of them might not go into the weekend because I might try to take care of it, might be able to take care of it tonight. So, but I'm going to go with that one anyway, which is in my Illinois job. I have a DOE project that was largely a complete failure, in large part because the new administration decided no more no cost extensions that had been originally promised to us. So we couldn't actually do the project. And I'm in the last couple of days of closeout where I have to do all kinds of paperwork to successfully close out a project that was not supported and didn't go anyplace. And I'd rather do just about anything else. Um, but um, I think whatever time I spend on that, I would rather be doing something about being in Italy,
Oh,
drinking
well,
another glass of wine or another cup of coffee or walking. I mean, it's going to be like 102 degrees tomorrow, so some limits of how much I want to be outside. But I think, yeah, just being in Italy instead of having to think about DOE.
and where in Italy are you?
We're in Lucca, which
And
is in Tuscany.
okay, now I'm thinking of the boot, so you got to give me directions based on the Italian the boot shape, because I
It's north. It's north of Pisa, north of Florence. It's like if you think of the boot as having like the furry thing at the top, it's
okay.
close to the furry part.
That works well. Thanks. Tammy, you're next.
Oh, it's me. Well, I'm gonna cheat a little bit because there isn't a lot I can complain about either. But we actually came to Luca to do Mure de Luca Park Run, which is a 5K on the city walls. And so I don't want to do the park run at 80 degrees. What I do want to do is do the park run at 60 degrees, but it is not going to be 60 degrees tomorrow.
How long is the park run?
It's 5K, so park run is a 5K that's like
Oh,
in a gazillion places around the world,
yes. Now I
and
remember you
it's
telling us
free.
about
You just
that.
sign up, and we are trying to start one in Fort Collins. So if y'all want to start a running event, talk to me. Um, but anyway, so I go places that I think would be cool to do park run.
Have to wait till the sun's up. I mean, can you do it at like 4 or 5
No,
in the
it's an
morning?
organized event. It's 9 a.m. every Saturday morning. So like everybody should like people show up and there's volunteers and all that stuff. And it's every week. So you can just show up any Saturday if there is a park run. So, but you can't just choose whatever you want.
Well, heck. Well, I'm glad. I think it's neat to get to do it in Italy, but I hope your temperature is better. Definitely.
It's really hot here, guys. Global warming. I mean, I don't know if it's global warming, but it's warming.
Misa, the, thanks for joining. And the question is, what's something you have to do this weekend that you're not looking forward to at all?
Oh, Kristen was
Or
next.
oh, Kristen, oh, I'm sorry. And I even
I
made the
always
list.
miss
Kristen.
Kristen.
So sorry.
It's fine. I really honestly I don't have anything that I have to do. It's pretty slow this summer. And but I have something that I am doing, wanting to do, and probably nobody wants to do themselves, is organize my basement. We have lots of storage stuff, and I've got to reorganize it all and like pull everything out and then reconfigure everything. So it's a big task, but to prep for doing inventory for my small business.
Oh,
So, so yeah,
but you're looking forward to that because you
I am
like,
so excited. I wanted
is
to
that
start
because,
yesterday, but I didn't
uh-huh.
have time.
Is that because it's for your new business, which totally makes sense? Or is that because you also like to organize, in which case maybe you could come over this weekend and help me with my 2 bedrooms?
Both. I like to organize. I like to change, like I used to change our like the format and the flow of our house, like furniture and stuff, almost like every 6 months. Be like, let's change this. And so yeah, my husband's kind of used to it at this point, but now it's to make room for more stuff. And so I got to figure out how to fit things. Yeah.
That would be a good puzzle, I think. I'll
It's a
help
very
you.
big,
I'll
big
trade you now.
puzzle. Yeah. Misa.
I think one thing that I am dreading is I'm working at Dutch tomorrow morning, and it is the first weekend where In-N-Out has been open. So I am dreading the parking situation, the amount of cars and traffic that is going to be in that area, but looking forward to the tips. Um, Sunday, I'm going to be going up into the mountains. I'm starting to get into fly fishing. So I'm going to go with another friend that's an avid fisherman. So that's something I'm looking forward to.
Cool. I always like the way that looks. My grandfather could fly fish, and that was so impressive. And I usually hooked things on the side of the bank and not
That's
in the
currently the
actual
phase that I'm
pond.
in. So we're trying to get better.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks everyone for sharing stuff that you like, and we will be thinking of you guys in Italy. It's not. It's actually we got yesterday was really nice. It was cool and rained. Miracle. We did. They got bad. We didn't get bad rain as far as flooding and stuff, but today's a really nice day. So sorry about that. Okay, so now I'm going to try and do what I always mess up, but maybe won't. All right. Oh, and then if I go to, okay, can you guys, you can see that, right? Okay. So feel free to to yell out. I'm not great at keeping track of the chat or looking, but so that's why I'm recommending verbal yelling if you have a question or anything as we're going along. So I put together some information that's about this idea of what do we what do we know about how to communicate and how in some ways like how people are processing dual environmental health risks. And one of my areas of expertise is looking at, well, how do you take the way people process information and think about health risks and the situation they're in, and how can you make it so that they're more likely to not necessarily make the decision you want them to make, but that you feel more comfortable that they're as informed as they choose to be, and that you've provided more information to them if they choose to take it, and you're trying to also make that information be in places where they're going to be frequenting and things like that. So I'm using this more from a practical standpoint, and just to start out. Often the health risks that I've seen that people have been starting to look at, and it's interesting. We're behind the times in looking at dual risks, and and there's also this idea of a cumulative risk that the EPA has said is when you're looking at like I put down at the bottom there, combined risk from aggregate exposures to multiple agents or stressors. So if you have extreme heat and poor air quality, you've got a dual risk. If you've got flooding and waterborne illnesses, you've got a dual risk. Sometimes it's the same thing that's causing both problems. So with flooding, it's the water that's you got a water event, it's causing damage as well as illnesses. Well, waterborne illnesses can follow from it. So as I said, we're starting to get into this area, and it's something I find really interesting because often people are weighing different risks and thinking like, well, which risk do I need to pay attention to? And gosh, when these all come together, what do I do? So the one of my grad students, she's just graduating this summer. Channing's was on several grants and got to do a lot of work with communicating with outdoor workers. That was the focus of what she was interested in, was outdoor workers and health risks. And Channing's background is in part she worked up in Wyoming for a while in the public health department up there. She got her master's from us, and then went on and got her PhD. And she looked at outdoor workers' health risks, and she focused on extreme heat and poor air quality. And the poor air quality can be from smoke, or it could be, for example, from ozone. So just you got bad air. And she did a twofold study using what we call the explanatory sequential mixed method design, which is basically, in her case, she started with a quantitative piece to it, which was a national survey, which I'll explain a little bit more in a minute. And then she followed that up with focus groups with City of Fort Collins outdoor workers. And so what she learns from the national survey helps to inform what she asked about in the focus groups. So that's the sequential part. Is in this case, she started with the quant side and then moved to the qual side. And the idea that it's called explanatory in part is because the second aspect, the focus groups, help to inform the oh, like the themes or the trends that you're seeing in the quantitative studies. So you can get more of like, well, why might this be occurring? Get more insights into it. So then the challenge in part is to marry the two data sets together. But we're seeing again also more of these kinds of designs, which are really great and very helpful in our field. So with her national survey, she looked at outdoor workers, and she had a definition for it. And I was looking at her dissertation and I couldn't grab it easily, but it's usually we talk about that you spend at least 50% of the day outside. Now, this can be that you can qualify as an outdoor worker, not just because you're an ag worker or something where we really think, yeah, you could be outside a lot of the time, but also delivery people can be considered outdoor workers. People, if you're a 22-year-old and you're working at a camp, you could be considered an outdoor worker. So she had a particular definition. That's one that's used in the field. And she wanted to be sure that her sample did represent the regions of the country. It represented gender in the country and age. But the gender and age are more associated with what does the Bureau of Labor Statistics tell us about outdoor workers. So in her quota sampling, for example, she had, I believe it was 70% were male or identified male and 30% female, because we know outdoor workers, based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics, are more likely to be male than female. And also when we looked at age, she quota sampled and looked at, I'm trying to remember which groups, but the very youngest group of workers, she doesn't have as many, but and the oldest group, she doesn't have as much in that part of her sampling, but she was reflecting the quotas or the sampling that we saw that would make sense based on these two sources of nationally representative kind of information. So that was pretty cool. That was all done online, and she did have funding for this study, so that helped her out a lot. It was from the EPA. She worked on the project that many of you may have heard about too, that Emily Fisher and Ashley Anderson and Katie Abrams were on that. And I think Cheryl Magsamen was, and I think not Jeff Fisher, oh gosh, what's Jeff's last name? Jeff in Atmos, can't remember his last name for the life of me at the moment. But it was a really nice, pardon me?
Pierce.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Jeff Pierce. So a nice sample there. And then the focus groups, which during the time of the study, the big EPA study, they ran a campaign in the city for 3 of the city's groups of outdoor workers, ones that work in natural areas, ones that work in parks, and then ones people who work in utilities. And so as part of the EPA project, that's where they were really looking very carefully at, well, how can we message to them? And they had a before after design with the messaging and everything. So it's a really nice design that they had, and they were looking at extreme heat and poor air quality there too. So what Channing did was part of the work part of the questions that she asked in the online national survey, and the data from there then influences what she asks the folks in the focus groups, who are representatives from that of outdoor workers, keeping in mind there is a limitation here, of course, in that these are outdoor workers from a single place. They're from Fort Collins. They work at a single organization, which is another aspect. The interesting thing, though, is that it is interesting that you have three groups from the same organization, because one of the things she found was that they think of they're not radical differences in the way they think about the risk. So the trends are the same, but the magnitude of kind of like how they thought about what the messaging should be like, how they the recommendations that she makes and so on, she has variety there, because the utility workers and the parks workers and the natural areas workers were different. They're, they've self-selected into these jobs that they like to do, and so there was some interesting variety there that strengthened her study. And she did this study. It was, golly, um, not this last summer, but the summer before. So it would have been like the summer and fall of 2024, she gathered her data. So I decided to really just focus on the practical applications of this. She's writing her papers now that'll go out for publication, and there's a lot of theoretical stuff behind this that is interesting, but I think what I find most interesting is the practical applications of what Channing's results tell us. So one thing, and this is not really surprising, but it's nice to get that verification, is people thought the outdoor workers, so this is all just about outdoor workers, really thought extreme heat. They perceived that as a more severe threat. Part of that is because they talked about how it's easier for them to notice it because you have those effects faster. You start to feel crappy faster. There are clearer cues to action because you have those physiological responses that are stronger. So they perceive the risks as higher. They really see, and by they I mean the outdoor workers, based on the information, when you look at it, that really motivates them. This avoiding extreme heat, or being able to work throughout the day when it's hot. And so this can be a motivator toward protection that we can also tack on, thinking about air quality as well. Overall, they think about air quality as a chronic condition, but there did seem to be a point, like a little tipping point, where when it gets bad enough, people will pay attention. And they'll wonder, gosh, is the air what's bothering me? Is ozone high today? Is there smoke? Do we have both those conditions? And so it can be used, and they perceive it, but not in the same way. And again, this is not terribly surprising, but it does say a lot about how we can gives us some information about messaging. Some of the things that Channing found are that and when you're thinking of the messages, how can you create messages that multiple people will connect with and do something about? And so I have there at the bottom attachment theory influence, because one of the things Channing was looking at was the idea of, through attachment theory, which is kind of like the extent to which you are socially and emotionally attached to others versus people who are not. And so you can essentially have people who are almost, they have anxiety about attachment. Someone who has an attachment anxiety is they ask everyone what they should do. They are really aware of what other people think of them. They are wanting more reinforcement of what they think more help, more social help. And you may also know people who are on the other side of that, which is more of an avoidant approach, and they're much more independent, and they don't like to talk about their feelings, and they don't like to think that they need others. So they're more, I can do it on my own. I'm good with that. And we see that variety of, and attachment theory is something, and the idea behind it, regardless of who you are, we can ask you a bunch of questions to kind of put you on a couple of, put you in a, well, for want of a better word, we can categorize you. Keeping in mind that categorization is really not very precise. But it's interesting to use it because it does give us some more insight into how to message and not just the message itself, but the channels that you use. And so this is one of the things that she brought into some of the theories in our, or the main theory in our area is the risk information seeking and processing model. And she brought in attachment theory as a personal level or personal level variable, and it worked pretty well. So that's the cool stuff. The other cool thing is that you don't have to do a lot to really be able to put your messages out there that would both help people who have more of that anxious attachment, and we would argue that at its most highest level, that's can be dysfunctional for the person. Because they're always asking, what should I do? What should I do? As well as more of your, for want of a better word, like your lone wolves who are just like, I can do everything on my own. You don't bother me about that. I'm not going to tell you stuff. And so with anxious attachment, one of the things you can do is you can have people talk about, like, with if your workers work in teams, there can be some sharing of experiences. People will talk to each other about, well, when it was really hot in 2020, 4, here's what I did. And your person who's worried about what to do will draw from that. So they can learn from others that idea of having people do kind of like little testimonials. You may have seen this, for example, also on websites for people who have like certain cancers or other chronic diseases. Or challenging health issues, you'll see stories about them and stories about people and the challenges that they face, but how they got through those. And so someone who has anxious attachment can draw from that. You can also have messaging that talks about the team and how the team can take care of its team members should think of others, that it's a group effort. And that can help someone who has anxious attachment to feel more like they can do what they're being asked to do as far as protecting themselves against, extreme heat or bad air. And they're more likely then to follow through and so on. If you have people who are more avoidant, then you can also provide messaging. And these are not necessarily counter against each other, but you can help them by talking about how they can be a better worker, how that they have the autonomy to do it, that they themselves can do it. They don't need other people to help to protect themselves. It while we talk about it in the previous one about collective responsibility, here we're emphasizing that, hey, this just means be sure you have your water with you, things like that an individual can do. So to get your people who are more, I'm very independent and I can take care of myself, then thinking from that standpoint, having ways that they can make decisions without having to ask the group what the decision is, those sorts of things will help. One of the things that Channing talks about in her dissertation is this idea of, and I'll hit this again a little bit later, but of talking to them about, hey, you'll be a better worker today. You'll be able to work harder or work by better, like get as much as done as as you wanted to, because by taking those heat breaks, taking a water break, for example, you can maintain your stamina. That will help you out. And so we don't do that as much yet in the messaging about extreme heat, for example. So that was one of the very interesting theoretical contributions that Channing's work is doing. Another practical application is, and if you think about how we talk about, think about the air quality index, and it talks about vulnerable populations. And workers don't see themselves that way. They prefer not to be considered vulnerable. Like at that, you have green air, and then you have, when they get to, unhealthy for sensitive groups. Well, yes, they're in a sensitive group because they have more exposure, but they do not want to identify being in that group because it makes them look like they're not as robust and not as, strong as they are. And that's not how they identify. So, we need to revise some of the messaging, particularly, especially at an organization, you could tailor it quite easily. But if you talk about, we're going to, like I said, increase your stamina, you can feel better faster. It's a safety issue, and at many organizations, safety is important. So, regardless of your health status, this is going to be helpful. So that's one thing, and that's something that I think it's really ripe for looking at other ways to message and what would work well there. Because I also think that regardless of whether we're talking about outdoor workers specifically, but for the general population, I think others also most likely do not like that idea of you're sensitive or you're vulnerable. So this is something I think we can do some work on. Also, make sure that the messages are task relevant. So for example, within the city, you've got people who are working on trails. You've got people that are, working in the parks there, grooming the grass and doing stuff like that. And then you've got your utility workers who the utility workers, they had more of that. We're going to do our job no matter the conditions because people depend on us because we give you energy or we are vital to the city and to the community. And your park workers and your natural areas workers, they could also feel that way, but not in that same way. It was um, I I related to kind of that thought of first responders a tad that, first responders, whatever it is, we're going to be there. We're going to take on those risks. And the utility workers in the city that were in her focus groups exhibited some of that. And so again, when you're thinking of task relevant approaches, well, what is task relevant for the utility worker versus the park worker versus the natural areas worker is going to be different, particularly the park and natural areas versus the utility worker. So again, tailoring. And then the idea of it being timely. One thing we did see was that she did see was that people, well, I may have this on another side. Let's see. No, I don't. So I'm going to say it here. The timely part is we can forecast farther out heat problems and feel pretty good about that. Whereas with air quality, it's more difficult to make it, and it varies. It can vary quite a bit even across Fort Collins and things like that. And so, if we can have more timely information about air, then workers can better plan their days or their shifts or their weeks because they know, oh, there's going to be 3 or 4 days of really bad air. We should do X and Y. We're doing better at the heat side of that. So that's one of those places where more measuring and more understanding could be helpful. Also, talk about bundling the information. So in the field, there's the idea of active information seeking and passive information seeking. And active information seeking is when I'm going to go find out about this, and passive is when you see it on the way. So you went to get information about how hot it is, and you passed by or you noticed the air quality information there too. And so bundling that information will be good because you can help them to see it on their way to what they most care about. They can see, oh, the air's bad today too. Okay. Instead of having them go to, for example, like 2 different places. So there's been a lot of work, practical work toward let's bundle that information. Then using multiple channels to put it out there. So these can be your people who have anxious attachment really like personal contact. They're going to prefer to have presentations in work meetings, for example. They're going to prefer for their good heavens, their supervisors to check in with them individually. And then it's also good, though, to have independent ways because that will help your avoidant people. So how else can I get this information? Can I get it on my own? Great. I've got an app that can do it. I don't have to do anything, I don't have to bother anybody. I can do this all on my own. So multiple channels, this reinforces that idea that we've had out there for quite a while. And by we, I mean, this is a known thing in the field, but it is encouraging when we see it in multiple places, that same pattern. Another thing is there's a tendency in the field with some of these environmental health risks like extreme heat or extreme temperatures on either end and air quality. If we can make it within organizations more of a year-round thing, then it becomes more routine, safety becomes more routine, and that way we should see more uptake, and that they're classifying it in a way it's like, oh, this is safety. Well, I have to be safe on my job. Okay. And there you see the same thing again. This is called, didn't look at all of my slides at the very last minute. But the last one there I want to mention is on that use multiple channels is the ability to personalize the alerts. So if apps can allow someone to say, just give me alerts when it's in the, not, I don't care about green, well, green I don't care about, but moderate I'm not worried about. I'm not even worried about sensitive. I want the next level so that they're not getting lots and lots of alerts. If you alert someone too much, then they tend to ignore all. There's data from, or evidence from studies of warning labels that you warn too much and people just quit looking. So you have to be more careful about how you are warning. And we see a lot of warning labels, for example, on, equipment and like hammers, and you see a lot more labels on ladders and things like that. It's not that those labels are necessarily bad. Some of them are common sense. Well, yeah, I don't want to throw my hammer at something I don't want it to hit. I also should not stand on the top of the ladder. But a lot of that is so they can avoid lawsuits. And so you'll see a whole lot of warnings, and when you do that, then people tend to ignore them altogether. So we need to be careful there. So then those were some of the takeaways from Channing's work. There was one other thing I wanted to mention, which is about psychological reactance. And this also relates to when you're creating messages. And this is a phenomenon. It's one of those pretty straightforward ones. But in general, the idea here is we all like autonomy. We all like to have choices. We all enjoy that. And if something threatens your choice, then typically we get frustrated, we get mad, things like that. Like say, when you go to 31 flavors or however many flavors it is now at Baskin Robbins, and there's like, well, I'm sorry, we only have 28 today. And for a minute, or even probably seconds, you might be like, oh, I was really hoping for all 31. And so that's a small reactance, and it's a frustration. What you can create messaging to avoid reactance, because if you do, you're in better shape. What happens is we're motivated to restore the freedom, and a couple of ways we respond to that. Typically, and these are generalizations. You get that boomerang effect where people, I don't care, I'm going to keep doing it. Or you're going to continue the threatened behavior, or you're just not going to adopt the advocated behavior. So that's a boomerang effect. You take my freedom away, I'm not going to do what you say, or I might do even more of what you tell me not to do because I'm mad because you're taking my freedom away. You also have indirect restoration of freedom. So this can occur where you start liking something more than you did just because now you can't have it. Another one is that you can watch others perform that threatened behavior, and that's a way, and with social media and things, it might be that you're watching more videos of people doing things you've been told not to do. Another one is and this is a form of, I'm trying to say, it's related to that direct restoration, but you attack the messenger from the standpoint of, it's not true, this is false information, I don't trust that source, there's no threat, but you're going to push back that way. And then the last one is that you might say, well, okay, you won't let me jump off my roof, that's a bad plan, but instead I'm going to jump off something else that's tall. And so you participate in a related behavior that may also carry the risk. So if we know people in general are it's a very human, very normal reaction to be like, oh darn, it's like when someone says you can no longer eat beets, and you're like, well, I don't like beets that much, but now I'm kind of mad because now you won't let me eat them, and so fine, now I really want beets. Um, it's typical. So there are ways to message so that you avoid saying it so that they're going to have that initial reaction back. So you could say, well, you have some choices here. You could do this or this. So you are restoring some of their agency in that case. Um, you can, other things we know is narratives are are less obviously persuasive. So you can have testimonials, you can have, stories about people. You can do it in that way because if we know someone is trying to convince us, just like with a commercial, we know it's a commercial, we know they're trying to convince us. A narrative can come in, and because of the way they're structured and things, we are less likely to put up that defense of, well, you're just trying to, persuade me. So those are a couple of things that can be done. The idea of providing choice, and even of saying, we want you to do X, but we realize you have choice in what you do, that you don't have to do X. Even that little bit of language can help avoid that reactance response. And then a couple things to keep in mind is there's state reactance, which is where it's the conditions, the situation, and then there's trait reactance. And so you may have friends of yours, family members, who have stronger psychological reactance. They push back harder. Everyone pushes back, but you may know someone that anytime you try to limit them, they get really mad. So people can differ on an individual level from, in having it. So they can have a stronger reaction. So basically we, from our end, are like, this is one of the newer ways to segment audiences and to think about, well, if we've got, and this could also work with different occupations, that if certain occupations kind of attract people have certain characteristics and they might have more trait reactance, then we're going to be even more careful about not triggering that. And so what you're trying to do, and we've seen there have at times been examples of using reactance for the better. And you may remember the Truth campaign with cigarette smoking and how they really had people get really mad in those campaigns about what the tobacco companies were doing. And the tobacco companies are doing terrible things. And so that anti-smoking campaign was actually quite successful because it used reactants in an effective way. And I think that's the end of my stuff. And I'm going to stop sharing. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. But those are just some things that in my area we think about when we're looking at messaging. And it's okay if you don't have questions. Totally get it. It's Friday.
Oh,
Well,
that
I
was
have
super
a lot of
interesting.
questions, so I can take up the time after Erica.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, no, thanks. That was really good. It resonated really well with me with a project I'm working on right now where we're trying to solve the problem that like there's all these tax incentives for plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and then people buy them and then they never use the electric battery aspect. There's a lot of data that we've been analyzing that shows people end up just using the internal combustion, and so like they're getting the tax breaks for buying an electric vehicle and then they aren't, providing the benefits that the EV offers. And so we've been working on developing a project to basically, based on messaging, like convince people that they need to, use their, plug in their car at the end of the day. And so I just went to CDOT last week actually, and we were discussing it with them and talking about like, is there a messaging like outreach platform that CDOT could, put effort towards to come up with some, you know, smart message to convince people to use, their plug-in electric vehicles as opposed to combustion engines. So I don't necessarily have a question, but I just wanted to say like that was super helpful and it got me kind of thinking a little bit. So maybe I will follow up with you once it kind of, settles and I can
Yeah.
think about how I can apply it.
Because there are, I mean, I even think about if they had a, like if you're like trying to get them into the pattern of, hey, you can do
Mhm.
this isn't that hard, it really works. I'm also almost wondering if they would be interested or could set up like a game. I mean, like, hey,
Yeah.
you can post how much you used yours, and that might be one way. But no, I'd be happy to talk to you. That's really interesting. I wouldn't have expected that response. I mean, that they wouldn't use it. Huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and maybe recently people have been more motivated to use,
because of the
electricity with
cost.
like
Yeah,
fuel
because we do know.
prices.
Yeah, because like with when they're trying to get people to stop smoking, taxes is one of the best ways. So a higher cost, but it could be maybe hopefully if they've started using it more because
Mhm.
of the higher cost, and now they're used to it more. It'd be interesting if you guys see a bump,
Yeah.
in the stuff. But no, that's really cool.
Yeah. 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 Thanks. Yeah, I always love when our topics kind of intersect like that.
I had a question about so you had this like customization piece that people respond better if they get to choose what their notifications are in that
Mhm.
element. And then I was kind of hit by that. And then the counterpoint of, I think your Baskin Robbins reference of like, I wanted this or was expecting this and it doesn't show up. Do you know of anyone or have you done any thinking about how you balance those two things? Like if you give people options and then you don't present the options that they might want, is that like the worst of both
Oh yeah.
worlds or
What we would say would be, I mean, that would be bad. And usually, the way we would try and avoid that would be through working with the groups and testing and seeing, okay, and
okay.
making sure, that we've got pretty representative samples of the kinds of people we think. So, there's more and more efforts to involve the groups in it. And in fact, part of Channing's work was that they got a lot of really good advice both in when they first started the campaign and then in the post campaign message measuring and beyond to adjust it so that it'll even do better for those different city worker groups. But you're exactly right, Kristen. A lot of it you've got to know your audience. You've got to know that group. Yeah.
Yeah, this makes me think like Eric and I have talked about an idea of this eye tracking project. We should circle
Yeah.
back to that, Erica. I think some of these things actually link up pretty well with that. Why do people choose the pieces of the notification that they do?
Yeah.
Well, that's great. It was a great
And
talk. Thank you.
oh, you're welcome. And there's people on campus who use like tracking quite a bit, like looking at labeling, nutrition labeling, and that kind of stuff. But I think that's something that will be helpful. Where are they going? What are they doing?
So, Marilee, one of the things I think of with regards to dual risks or multiple risks is do people respond more to one than another? And it sounded like you said they were thinking about the heat more. And
Hmm?
then, if so, do you just leverage that one to try to message about everything? And like, because it seems like if people have a lot to think about, like all these things are wrong with your life, then they would get overwhelmed. And so, how do you package that for sort of optimal efficiency?
That's I think that's one of the things we're still wrestling with a lot. I think part of it, and if I was giving advice to an organization, I would be saying, okay, let's look at what your for these outdoor workers. Honestly, if I can protect them from extreme heat and I can do that, that's what I'm going to focus on. If bringing in the air quality stuff negate or pulls them away from the heat, then that's not a good idea because of that fact that heat is can kill much faster. Um, I think that if we can, and that's where that idea of kind of bundling the information, because one of the things that the outdoor workers said in her focus groups were in Channing's groups were, yeah, if you put them together, then we're going to get used to seeing them. Oh, and they even would say, I've seen that information. Part of it is, I think if we make it also though, so it applies to their job or to what they're doing, they may be able to better bring them both together so that, um, and she is looking at outdoor workers, they're on the job versus they're just in their general life. So that does, I would say, limits what they have to think about because like while you're on the job, this is what you should do. Um, and that should lower their cognitive load some. So sometimes what we do is we think we will address a person within the role that they have that's most important. And then that's another way to kind of say, okay, while you're doing X, think about these things. And then they can kind of get rid of other concerns that they have because we're focusing them. That could be a way. It doesn't really answer your question very well, but I think that being able to let people customize is another approach that can help them to regulate how much they see. And then we need to just, when we know that, maybe over time bring in, here's another thing to think about. But then bundle it in. And honestly, how can they, at the same time we're telling them, for example, avoid the heat, if the air is bad, if you take a break indoors in clean air, that would help in both cases. So, thinking about what do we do when there's two things we need them to do, and can the thing you're doing for one risk help with the other risk?
Yeah, and hopefully they're not at odds, right? Like one addressing one makes the other worse, but I could see cases where that would be true.
And I think that's part of I think with indoor air and outdoor air, and you're talking, how you talk about those sometimes, if the indoor air is bad, one way to get rid of it being bad is to open your windows, but that can bring in bad outdoor air, and you know, um, I think those can be challenging things. And maybe it's like, hey, we need to get you out of that house and go to the clean air center, go to your, the neighborhood school because we got good air there.
So I had a question also, but I know we're over time. Should I just follow up with you later or should I ask it now?
Is it a hard question or an easy question, Paul?
I don't know. I'd like to think it's an easy question, but it might not be.
Why don't you
Well,
ask
why
it?
don't we say that people who need to, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
people need to drop or need a break before their next meeting or whatever,
Okay.
don't feel any guilt about doing so. And is it okay for you to stay, Marilee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So, so we have a project in Illinois, and it's one that Tammy has asked me to get on our list of these calls at some point, and I think I'm in much better position to do that soon, where we are giving people alerts based on their indoor air quality, and they're customized based on what we saw at their house when we were deploying the instrumentation. But one of the things that we're doing is the alerts give guidance. They're giving solutions like this is going sideways, and this is what we recommend that you do about it. And we've actively decided that if we don't have any solution to give, if all we have is a problem to identify, we're not going to give them an alert at all. And so I'm wondering in this thing about alerts, do you see a difference, or have you looked at the difference between whether the alerts are identifying problems or identifying solutions?
We typically, we haven't, well, first I should say, I don't think we've done any work where it's like we haven't started with there's a problem or here's something we can help. It's bad air. Here's what you could do. So are you suggesting that we would start with saying, hey, well, let's see.
I'm just wondering because you
Yeah.
talk about people like they react badly to the alerts. They start doing things that are kind of the opposite of what you want them to do. There's just things that don't go how you would have liked. Like you had an idea that the alert would serve a certain purpose, and then people go a different direction. They
Oh,
don't
right.
respond to them. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering whether you see a difference in how they respond based on whether the alerts are identifying problems or also identifying solutions.
And when you, and I haven't seen us say gosh, it's always that question of have we ever done the one where we go, we're just going to tell you what the problem is versus the one where we say, here's the problem and the solution. Um, we tend to think about here's the problem, here's one way to talk to you about the solution, here's another problem, here's another, or here's the same problem in another way. And um, we, so the answer is that I don't know, but that's a really good question. What we do know typically is that um, we have to get their attention. And one of the ways to get the attention is through here's a problem. Um, but so in other words, you're saying like, if we just tell them, here's a problem and don't tell them what to do, is that versus we tell you, here's a problem and here's how to solve it.
Yeah.
Right?
And is that
Yeah.
something that you've seen having an impact? And maybe you haven't looked at it. I don't know.
Well, I think we haven't really looked at that partly because typically what we're going to say is that according to the theories and models in our field, you don't give them a problem unless you can do something to help, or that messaging wouldn't really be worthwhile necessarily because, it's we're telling you about something and you can't do anything to fix it. What I can think about is or an option. It's kind of weird, but so let's say you say, hey, we know you have this problem. Um, Currently, we don't know how to fix it, but if you want to know more, or if you want to keep on our list, we'll let you know when we do. Um, uh, and but yeah, usually there's all the ethical thing of we're telling you about something you don't know about, or you can't. Is it that they can't fix it because we don't know how to fix it, or is it because the fix is really expensive?
It's sometimes it's not necessarily that. It's just that like so we're getting into this a little more deeply now, but
Yeah, we're like way over now,
Sorry.
but
yeah.
maybe we should, I would love to talk this out because that's a really interesting question. What
Yeah,
do you do when there's no
right.
solution? Like I would ask them if they wanted to know. Do
So
you
what I
want to know if you have a problem, even if we have no solution? But
Yeah. So it's just a little preview for when I talk about this other project that Tammy has said I should get on the list. Think about like any consumer grade indoor air quality monitor. They are all pretty much only saying you have a problem.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, in my view, that's not effective messaging.
And
So,
that
yeah,
is essentially every indoor air quality monitor on the market that's targeted at a consumer.
right.
So
Well, they're assuming, I think, that the person who's bought that has bought that because they know what to do when it does go off. I mean, but
and,
I'm not sure if
and
we,
and then people wonder why people don't use these things.
yeah,
So anyway, maybe pull up there is a little bit of a preview. So
yeah. No, it's really, I mean, and I can look into, once I get well, definitely in a year, but even before that, can look at what we do in those cases. Because we typically would say, well, the messaging we're going to give you can't just tell you this is a problem. It needs to also talk to you about how you can solve it and help you to support the idea that you can. But,
but
but yeah, you're right.
this gets into interesting ethical territory, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
yep.
So I'm very sorry to have to table this 2 hour discussion. Thank you, Marilee, for sharing what you know, and I'll look forward to bringing some of those things in to
Oh, it
other
was great.
projects.
Thank you for listening. And Channing did some really cool stuff. So thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. Bye. Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Well,